Hi friends, I'm Chelsea and I am here with my September reading wrap-up. So you may notice the familiar background here. Yes, I am back home. It's been a couple weeks since I've made a video. While we've been gone, I kind of just wanted to focus on reading and family time, and I didn't really feel like making a video if I'm being honest, but I'm feeling ready to do it again, especially now that I'm back with my bookshelf and all my books. It makes me happy to have all my books here, and so it's inspiring me to make more videos again. So this is a little later than I would normally do a wrap-up, like the end of the next month, but you know, it's fine. We're trying to get back into routines, trying to get back to normal. Things are still pretty bad here in Asheville. Crazy just driving around, seeing all the destruction and debris even over a month later. It's going to be a long road ahead, but Asheville is resilient and we are coming back. We're just working hard and doing our best to get back into normal life. I'm going to keep posting links to help with the relief efforts of Hurricane Helene, so feel free to check that out in my description of this video. But for now, let's talk about books. And my cats are wrestling because why not? This is wrestling hour apparently, so you'll probably hear some sounds of mischief in the background. So in the month of September, I read 8 books and I DNF'd 1 book. Technically 2, but one of them was a soft DNF and I ended up finishing it in October. So I'm not even going to talk about it and you'll figure out what it was in October. So 8 books read, 1 DNF, and I'm just going to try to go through this quickly because I always go really long on my wrap-ups and the editing takes forever and I just kind of dread it sometimes, honestly. So I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet to make it easier on myself. So I'm not going to do like all the quotes like I normally do. I won't have my reading journal. I have notes on my phone. Just going to go as quickly and easily as I can and try to give you my general thoughts of the books I read in September. I really had a good reading month. I pretty much enjoyed all of the books I read except for the one that I did not finish, but the others were all in the 3 to 5 star range. So it was a pretty successful reading month. Stop. Hey, stop it. Anyway, please excuse the cat interruption. I don't know what I was saying. I think I said that it was a good reading month. We'll just start with that. So the first book that I read in the month of September was Dawnshard by Brandon Sanderson. I listened to the audiobook and this is a novella in the Cosmere. It's meant to be read between the 3rd and 4th book of the Stormlight Archive, and it's considered a hefty novella, which only Brandon Sanderson would write a hefty novella. I wanted to read that in between Oathbringer and Rhythm of War, I think, are the correct titles to read that in between. And I'm not going to go in depth on the plot because if you haven't read any of the Cosmere books or Stormlight Archive books, you're not going to understand. And if you have, you probably kind of already know about this one. But basically this is like a pirate quest kind of story. It features some of the side characters that you meet in the Stormlight Archive books, and it kind of delves deeper into their stories and focuses on them a little bit, which I appreciated. I actually thought this book was about a different character than it was actually about, so that was kind of confusing and disappointing at first because I really liked the character that I thought it was going to be about, but I ended up enjoying the character that it actually focused on, and so it wasn't a bad thing. My expectations were not correct coming into this book. This was a very fun, mostly lighthearted pirate quest kind of story, mysterious and a bit ominous at times. The characters are uncovering some mysterious things. Honestly, it's been almost 2 months now since I've read this, so I don't remember a whole lot, which is not great because there's some important things that happened that are going to lead into the next Stormlight book. I do remember enjoying it for the most part. I really enjoyed following the 2 main characters. Their names are Risen and Lopin. Risen, one of the main characters, she has lost the use of her legs, and so I really enjoyed kind of the disability representation. I thought that was done well. And Lopin, he is one of my favorite characters in the main series. He's hilarious. I thought there was some good character development here, and I'm definitely glad I read this when I did. There were some things that kind of went over my head a bit and it got a little complex and just lost my interest at certain points, so I don't remember like a whole lot about it. I did have a good time with it, recommend reading it for sure. Look forward to continuing in the Cosmere hopefully soon. Okay, the next book I read was The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This was a 5-star read for me, my favorite book of the month. I have been seeing a ton about it on Booktube. My expectations were pretty high, and in this case, they were actually met. I loved it. I did not want to put it down. This is definitely a literary mystery, kind of a slow burn. I've seen some people say that it's a thriller, but I would say don't go into it thinking it's a thriller because you'll be disappointed. It's definitely more of a slow burn mystery that focuses heavily on characters, and so it has a literary fiction feel with a historical setting. It's set in the 70s. Even with it not being a fast-paced thriller, I did not want to put it down, and it was very gripping. I'm gonna just read the description because that's easier than me trying to summarize the plot. So this says, when a teenager vanishes from her Adirondack summer camp, two worlds collide. Early morning, August 1975, a camp counselor discovers an empty bunk. Its occupant, Barbara Van Laar, has gone missing. And Barbara isn't just any 13-year-old. She's the daughter of the family that owns the summer camp and employs most of the region's residents. And this isn't the first time a Van Laar child has disappeared. Barbara's older brother similarly vanished 14 years ago, never to be found. And then it kind of goes into a search, and you uncover different secrets, things that kind of connect these two disappearances together, going into the family who owns this camp and the disparity between them being the rich family and then kind of the community around them. Just a really family-focused story. I loved it. Highly recommend. I want to read more of her books now. So this one has lots of different POVs, like every chapter, and it also has a lot of different timelines. So it could be a little confusing, I think. I was not really confused at all. I felt like it was done very seamlessly, but if you have a hard time with lots of POVs and different timelines, it might be difficult for you. I thought that every character was just so intentionally placed in the story, and everyone had their role to play within the mystery, within the narrative of the story. There were so many twists and turns, little reveals. Just piecing it all together was such a fun experience. The setting was great. It's like a summer camp in the 70s and very like in the woods, very immersive. The writing was great. There were so many quotes and one-liners that I wanted to write down and that just like made me stop and take a second to think about. I thought the mystery was very captivating, loved the kind of complex family drama and just the discussion of wealth and power and how that affects your life and others around you. Also, there was a lot of commentary on women, what it looks like when they don't have a lot of choices in their lives. It was pretty sad. There were some characters that I felt so sad for and so attached to. Overall, just such a great read. I would love to read this one again, and I highly recommend it. The third book I read was Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. This was a buddy read with Shuba Reads Books. I did a little bit of reading and listening to this one, but I happen to own the book as well. This one is a historical, true crime, psychological thriller, I guess. It centers around Ted Bundy and kind of his killing sprees in Florida, Tallahassee specifically, and it kind of follows two different fictional characters who were affected by this. One of them is the president of the sorority at Florida State University. Her friend and several other friends are attacked, and so she kind of finds herself at the center of it. And then at the same time, there is another character across the country, and her friend is also attacked. And so eventually they intertwine and meet, and they're kind of trying to figure out who the killer is, first of all, because they don't really know, trying to find justice for their friends who have been killed so terribly. What's interesting about this is that it never refers to Ted Bundy by name. It refers to him as the defendant. It just really focuses on the women's side of this and not giving so much emphasis on him. With him being kind of a celebrity serial killer, he can be kind of glamorized in the media, but it felt like the author of this book really wanted to take that glory and emphasis away from him and really tell the story of what it's like for these women who have been brutally murdered and abused. So I really enjoyed this one. Enjoyed is kind of a weird word to say because it was really maddening and sad, incredibly heavy and disturbing, but it was really fascinating and captivating. I thought it was written really well. Definitely made me think a lot and look into things about Ted Bundy that I didn't know, which was probably a mistake because yeah, it's just really disturbing. And it started pretty fast paced. It kind of slowed down a little bit, especially when you had two different kind of timelines going and bouncing back and forth between the characters. There were times where I got a little confused by the timelines emotions, but it did all come together in the end. And yeah, overall just made me really mad and sad. Makes you take a look at kind of the way the cases were dealt with in the court and with the police. Again, just really frustrating to think about. I do recommend this one. It's definitely a heavy and dark book, but I thought it was really well done. I thought the audiobook was great too. Next up, I read The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This was for my in-person book club, and did I listen to the audiobook? Yes, I listened to the audiobook. I did read the ebook a little bit, but I mostly listened to the audiobook, which was kind of fun. It had like music, and I think it was narrated by Neil Gaiman, which, by the way, not endorsing him as a person. I know there's some stuff that's come out lately, and I just happened to read a book by him for the first time, so that was not intentional. It was a good one. I didn't love it, honestly, but I didn't hate it either. So I'm going to read just the quick little synopsis. So this follows Nobody Owens, who is known to his friends as Bod. He is a perfectly normal boy. Well, he would be perfectly normal if he didn't live in a graveyard, being raised and educated by ghosts, with a solitary guardian who belongs to neither the world of the living nor the world of the dead. There are dangers and adventures for Bod in the graveyard. The strange and terrible menace of the Sleer, a gravestone entrance to a desert that leads to the city of ghouls, friendship with a witch, and so much more. But it is in the land of the living that real danger lurks, for it is there that the man Jack lives, and he has already killed Bod's family. This is basically like a middle grade fantasy horror, I guess, like spooky vibes, definitely good for fall. Overall, I liked it. I felt like I wasn't super engaged the whole time. It's kind of told in little snippets. Each chapter is like a different time in Bod's life, and so it felt a little random at times, like just little vignettes almost. And so sometimes I wasn't that invested in like the full story as a whole, but I did enjoy a lot of the spooky, darker elements. It was pretty whimsical and fun. It had great atmosphere. Like I said, the audiobook really brought it to life, which was fun. It definitely had a sweet, heartwarming message, and it wasn't too dark. Like with it being middle grade, it definitely didn't leave me feeling like depressed or sad. There were some sadder moments, but overall it was very heartwarming. So yeah, it was good. I would recommend it, but not like my new favorite book. Okay, next up, I read Clytemnestra by Costanza Casati, and this was for Ellen Made Book Club, and also I did a buddy read with Shuba Reads Books, and it's Mimi Duong. One of those is her channel name. Sorry, my memory sucks. So this is a Greek mythology kind of feminist retelling of Clytemnestra, who I didn't really know anything about. And again, I'll just read the first little part here. So this says, monarch, mother, murderer, magnificent. You were born to a king, but you marry a tyrant. You stand by helplessly as he sacrifices your child to placate the gods. You watch him wage war on a foreign shore, and you comfort yourself with violent thoughts of your own, because this was not the first offense against you. This was not the life you ever deserved, and this will not be your undoing. Slowly you plot. When your husband returns in triumph, you become a woman with a choice. And yeah, basically it's this revenge story. If you know the original story of Clytemnestra, then you're probably familiar with it already, where she is known as the woman who kills her husband, who has formerly killed her child. I think Shuba said this is basically like the Game of Thrones of Greek mythology, and very accurate. Definitely a lot of death and brutal killing and kind of plotting, scheming, all of that going on. I really enjoyed it. I've been loving mythological retellings lately. I had just read The Song of Achilles the month before, and there was some like crossover with characters and plot lines, and I enjoyed having that prior knowledge to it. This one, as with any Greek mythology, has a lot of flawed characters. Oh yeah, and I listened to this one on audio and read it, so a little bit immersion reading, and I enjoyed both of those experiences. For the most part, I was really thoroughly captivated by this book. It took a little to get into. It's always kind of a slow start with mythological retellings. Overall, I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed Clytemnestra as the main character. I thought she had some good depth to her. I enjoyed following her relationships with her family and just kind of following her over the course of her life. I thought the characters were really well developed. Great atmosphere, great writing. Felt like it was an empowering portrayal of different women taking their life back into their own hands after being really wronged by certain men. I really enjoyed this. I'm looking for more mythological retellings to read. Next up, I listened to A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. This is like horror, fantasy. If you read T. Kingfisher, you know that her writing is very much genre bending, lots of different genres influence there, and this was my first official book of hers, but I loved this and I really want to read more. let me know if you have recommendations of where to go from here, because I'll read pretty much anything she writes at this point. I thought this was really well done. I totally binged this. It was a super quick read to me, and I should probably tell you what it's about before I go into my review. So this is a retelling of the Brothers Grimm Goose Girl, which I'm not familiar with. I still don't really know, but I guess it's a retelling of that. This says, rife with secrets, murder, and forbidden magic, Cordelia knows her mother is unusual. Their house doesn't have any doors between rooms, and her mother doesn't allow Cordelia to have a single friend, unless you count Falada, her mother's beautiful white horse. But more than simple eccentricity sets her mother apart. Other mothers don't force their daughters to be silent and motionless for hours, sometimes days on end. Other mothers aren't sorcerers. After a suspicious death in their small town, Cordelia's mother insists they leave in the middle of the night, leaving behind all Cordelia has ever known. And then they go to this manor of a wealthy older man. She's trying to lure this man into marriage. His unwed sister, Hester, lives there as well. Basically, they all kind of get to know each other, and everyone kind of realizes there's some weird things going on with Cordelia and her mother. So definitely some darker things going on here, including abuse, like heavy abuse, so just be aware of that. It's definitely very spooky, disturbing, ominous, creepy, dark elements, but somehow it also had some cozy feelings, which seems weird. There were some scenes where Hester, the older lady, and her friend group were just hanging out in their little parlor, doing some knitting, gossiping, and so felt very cozy. But then other times where it's very disturbing to see how Cordelia's mother is abusing her. So interesting juxtaposition there. Love the atmosphere, the setting, the writing, the characters, and there's also some found family elements, which I really loved. Audiobook was great. We had a couple different narrators. This is a great fall read, so definitely recommend adding this to your fall TBR if you haven't read it. And really the only things I didn't love, the ending felt kind of sudden and underwhelming in some ways. There were some things that I felt like we were kind of heading towards plot-wise, and then they didn't happen, and so I felt a little like I wanted certain things to happen. I don't want to spoil it, but those were just some small things. Otherwise, I really liked it a lot. Definitely recommend it. Okay, next up, I read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Lori Gilmore. I bought into the hype. I've been seeing it all over the place. I saw this being advertised as like a Gilmore Girls cozy romance, spicy romance that is perfect for fall. I thought it was a cozy mystery at first for some reason. It's not. There's like a tiny mystery element, but it's really just like a cozy fall romance. I listened to the audiobook. Another one that I finished really quickly. It's an easy read. Like the writing is not hard to understand at all. So if you need a quick book to get through, this is a great one. Basically, this is about Jeannie, whose aunt gives her the beloved Pumpkin Spice Cafe in the small town of Dream Harbor that very much feels like Stars Hollow from Gilmore Girls. So Jeannie leaves her busy life in the city to go run this cafe. And then, of course, none other than Logan, the small town local farmer who shows up. He's grumpy. She's sunshine. We got that little trope going. He is very irritated by how upbeat she is. She's very much Lorelai Gilmore. He's very much Luke Danes. You can kind of imagine what goes on from there. Small town gossip, happenings, fall activities, and then this romance that forms. There's, like I said, a little mystery, but it's not very much part of the plot. This was not anything mind-blowing. Like, writing was fine, characters were fine, whatever. I didn't really read it for that. I wanted the fall vibes and to feel like I was in Gilmore Girls world, and I definitely got that. It's not something that I'm going to think about ever again, probably, but it was fun, it was cute, had the small town fall atmosphere, made me want to watch Gilmore Girls, so that's good. There are definitely some spicy romance moments towards the end, which were expected, so if you don't like spicy romance, probably not for you. Overall, I wasn't really that invested in the romance or the main characters. There was definitely some insta-love, some miscommunication elements going on, but I didn't really even care. I got what I wanted from it, which was, again, the fall vibes, the cozy feel, small town feel. I didn't really care that the writing wasn't great or that the romance wasn't that deep. I just had a good time, knocked it out real quick, and do recommend it. I do want to read the other books in this series too. I think they follow different characters. So yeah, fun, cozy read. So the last book that I fully read was A Short Walk Through a Wide World by Douglas Westerbeek. This is pretty much like magical realism, historical fiction. This has been compared to Addie LaRue, or I should say The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which definitely I could feel that for sure. It also felt a little bit like The Midnight Library, and if you've seen the movie The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, it kind of reminded me of that. All good things. I enjoyed all of those. So yeah, this was really fun. Again, I'll just give you a quick little synopsis here. So this starts out in Paris in 1885, I believe. Yes, it follows Aubrey Tourvel. Basically, she develops this mysterious illness one day where she starts bleeding out of nowhere. No one knows what's happening. And then she starts to leave town, I think to find a doctor probably. The bleeding suddenly stops, and so she realizes that the only way to cure this sudden mysterious illness is to change locations pretty much, and so she can only stay in one place for like 2 to 4 days. So yeah, she can never stay in one place, and basically this follows her life around the world. It starts all the way from when she's 9 years old, when this illness starts, and pretty much all of her life. It goes all the way from Paris to like the Himalayas, lots of different countries around the world. This definitely had kind of a mysterious, dreamy feel, and it was definitely kind of a unique book, not like a lot of other books I've read, which I always appreciate. If you love traveling, you will love this book, I think, and it made me want to travel, but it also made me realize like how grateful I am to be able to stay with my family and not have to always be traveling, being able to be like settled in one place. I finished this book right before we left after the hurricane, and so the timing of that was weird because now I'm like, I don't want to travel, I just want to be home, you know? So I really felt for her predicament of never being able to settle anywhere. I thought it brought about some interesting things to think about. This was a pretty easy read, had short chapters. I was just hooked. The main like complaints, I guess, would be that I didn't feel like super connected to Aubrey as a character. I didn't feel like she developed a whole lot over time. I know people have said that too about Addie LaRue, which I didn't really feel that way, but I did feel that a little bit in this book, that I wanted a little more character development with her over the course of this book, and I was still left with some questions at the end, which normally some questions are fine, but there were some things that I was still like, I don't really know if I understood that or if that was fully satisfying, but I did really enjoy it and would recommend it. I feel like I'm a broken record here, but really pretty much every book I read in September I really enjoyed to some extent. Some more than others, but this was definitely a good one that I recommend. Okay, and now the last one is the book that I DNF'd. So kind of ending on a less positive note, that's just how the month went. So I DNF'd The Violin Conspiracy by Brendan Slocum. This is basically like a literary mystery, I guess. I was listening to the audiobook for this one. I got about 60% in actually, so a fair amount of the book, and I just started speeding up the audiobook, trying to finish it, and I was like, there's no need to push through this. If I'm not enjoying it, I'm just gonna put it down, because I honestly didn't really care to continue reading or care about what happened with the story, and so I was like, not wasting my time when I have so many books calling out to me. I'll tell you the premise of this one. It sounded really cool, and I still think that a lot of people might enjoy this book. I just didn't love it. So this is a mystery about a black classical musician whose family heirloom violin is stolen on the eve of the most prestigious classical music composition in the world. No, competition. I cannot speak. His violin is stolen right before this big competition. Ray McMillan loves playing the violin more than anything, and nothing will stop him from pursuing his dream of becoming a professional musician. Not his mother, who thinks he should get a real job. Not the fact that he can't afford a high-caliber violin. Not the racism inherent in the classical music world. And when he makes the startling discovery that his great-grandfather's fiddle is actually a priceless Stradivarius, his star begins to rise. So someone steals this really expensive violin. He's trying to get it back, and he's kind of delving into his family history as well. And so it started out pretty good. I was enjoying it. Being a musician myself, I was really intrigued by the premise of this and just kind of, immersing myself in a character who's in a world that I'm really familiar with, like classical music. So I definitely enjoyed the musical elements of it, and I thought the writing was pretty good, but overall the mystery just wasn't that engaging to me. It kind of started out strong, but then we went back into his past and it just really slowed down a lot. Like, we didn't really get as much of the mystery. There were times where it would jump back into the present with the stolen violin, but then it would go back into the past, and sometimes that works for me, but in this case I just really wasn't that invested in the mystery itself. And honestly, the main complaint was that the main character really started to grate at me. I don't fully know how to talk about this because I really appreciate what the author is trying to do here. It seems like a lot of this was based on his real life experiences of like being a musician himself, being a Black musician specifically, and experiencing racism in the classical music world, which is a real thing for sure and is definitely a worthy topic of discussion. But I feel like the way he wrote the story and the main character, literally every interaction that the main character Ray experienced was like the most vile, extreme, terrible racism that you can imagine, which I'm not denying that that's like a real thing, you know, but it felt so heavy-handed, like not subtle or nuanced at all. Every encounter he had was basically just like as racist as you can imagine. I don't know. It just didn't feel like it was the best way to deal with this. It almost feels like this would have been better as like a memoir maybe of the author's life and not trying to just insert all of these different experiences into a fictional story where it didn't feel realistic. It just felt like a lot of terrible encounters that I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. Like, this is definitely a serious thing, but it didn't really affect me like the way I hoped it would. I don't know how to talk about this without sounding like insensitive. I feel like it just could have been written better and could have been more impactful if he had written it differently. And also, like I said, the mystery just wasn't that engaging to me. I think it would have been better as maybe a nonfiction memoir because it's definitely a topic that needs to be talked about, but I just didn't love the main character or the way the story was written. So that was a long discussion on why I DNF'd it, but unfortunately I didn't love this, so I'll probably give it back to a Little Free Library, which is where I found it. So at least I didn't spend money on it, you know. Anyway, those are all the books I read and DNF'd in September. As always, let me know if you've read any of them, if you have similar or different thoughts, and let me know about your favorite book that you read in September. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!